Okay, so this example comes from the note that I gave you, I believe on Friday, called Finding Side Lengths. So in this case here, we're on the second example where the angle is equal to 31 degrees, and we're looking to find side I. So this was the instruction on Friday, but we just didn't get to finish some of these things here. So side I is directly across from capital I. So if I put an arrow there, that's lowercase I. I'll erase the arrow because it could be pretty confusing. And once you do that, what you want to do is you want to start by writing what you're finding or what you need if you remember the process. So in this case, we're finding or we need lowercase I, which we need to write down what that is. So I'm just going to erase that for a second, and we're going to label our sides. So across from the 90-degree angle is the hypotenuse. Across from the given angle is the opposite, and then that leaves I to be the adjacent. So we're finding or needing the adjacent, which is equal to I. We're given some pieces of information. So in this case, we're given the opposite. So I'm going to write given O equals 22 millimeters. This is what's going to help you determine what you're going to use. So I'm just going to rewrite SOHCAHTOA up here, just so that you can see it. And in this case, we have A and O. So for the sine ratio, we need O and H, which is this is not the case. For cosine, you need A and H, which is not the case. And if you notice, we have O and A, which means we're going to use the tan. So we're going to write use tan, but remember that you need an angle right beside where it says sine, cos, or tan. So you write tan of 31 degrees. And then you can go ahead and write the ratio for tan. So the tan ratio is the opposite over the adjacent. And then you just fill in some values here. So tan of 31 degrees equals, the opposite is 22. And the adjacent is either left as the adjacent, or you could put a lowercase I because that's what you're looking for. Since the unknown is at the bottom, you need to make sure that you create a proportion, because what happens here is that you need to flip both fractions because the unknown is at the bottom. So if I go ahead and do that, I'm going to end up with this proportion, and I have to solve for I. And in order to solve for I multiply both sides by 22. So when I do that, 22 divided by 22 is 1I, or just I. 1 times 22 is 22. So I want to do that multiplication before I do anything else. But you'll notice at this point that this right here is not a multiplication, it's a division. So what you do at this point, in your calculator, you type in 22 divided, because this line means to divide. So we're going to divide not by 31, but by the tan of 31. So make sure you're typing it exactly as is, close your bracket, press enter, and that means that I is equal to, I just missed it here, 36.6, and the units in this case are in millimeters. So that's what I equals to. So again, don't forget to divide. Make sure that you're dividing by the tan of 31. Not just by 31, by the tan of 31, because tan of 31 is a decimal. Okay, so we're going to try another example here. This is from your self-assessment, and you're going to have to complete questions C, D, E, and F on your own after I do these two examples. And then there's a worksheet for you to work on and get a lot more practice on this, since there will be some quizzes coming up. So I think the first thing you should do is always label your sides before you even do anything. So across from the 90-degree angle, we have the hypotenuse. Across from the given angle is the opposite. And that leaves side BT as lowercase r. We also have to look at the instructions. Now that we've labeled the sides, we can go ahead and label and find the length of side B. So lowercase b is always directly across from capital B. So there's capital B, angle B, right across from it is where lowercase b is found. Okay? So now that I know where the location of lowercase b is, I know my opposite, my adjacent, and my hypotenuse, I can really start with find. or need. So I'm finding lowercase b, which is the opposite, because we already labeled it. I'm given the hypotenuse. As you can tell, the adjacent has no value. So we're given the hypotenuse, which means that when I have O and H, and I write down SOHCAHTOA, I know that O and H is the sine ratio. So I'm going to use sine, and don't forget that you need an angle right beside sine, cos, or tan, and the angle that we're given is angle 28 right here. So we're going to write sine of 28 degrees equals, and the ratio is the opposite over the hypotenuse. Okay, you can use capital letters if you want. It's entirely up to you. So sine of 28 equals, the opposite we don't have, it's lowercase b. The hypotenuse, however, we do have, and it's 15. So at this case, you need to solve for b, and to solve for b, there's a division that's in the way, a division by 15 to be more specific. So to cancel out that division by 15, what you want to do is multiply both sides by 15. So this time it's a multiplication. So you can see how this gets very confusing very quickly. So you have to know the concepts. Don't memorize how to do it. So 15 divided by 15 is 1b, or just b. Then if I take out my calculator, I don't want to do 28 times 15 because it says sine of 28. Don't forget to close the bracket and then do times 15. So the answer here is 7.0. I'm just going to look at how they want us to round, and they want us to round to the nearest tenth, which is 1 decimal place. So if I round that to 1 decimal place, it is 7.0. Okay, and I have to put the approximate button there, or dot, sorry. So we can say that b is approximately 7.0 n centimeters. Okay, so that's one where the unknown is at the top. I'm going to see if one of these, the unknowns, is at the bottom. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and do b. So this one here, we know that the angle that's given is angle 37 degrees. We're looking for the side length of b. So remember that capital B is right here, and right across is lowercase b. Okay, so that's just to help you find lowercase b. Now we'll identify the sides. So they're adjacent, the opposite, and the hypotenuse. So directly across from that 90-degree angle is the hypotenuse. Directly across from the given angle is the opposite. And that leaves lowercase b to be the adjacent. So now that I've labeled my sides, I'm good to start my process, which is find, given, and use. So I'm finding the adjacent, which is lowercase b. I'm given the hypotenuse in this case, which is 16 meters. So now we have to decide what we're going to use. This is kind of a hard part. So here's SOHCAHTOA. You take a look at the letters that you have in your little chart here. A and H means I'm going to use cos. But cosine of the angle that's given, which is 37 degrees. Now the cosine ratio states A over H, which means the adjacent over the hypotenuse. Okay. We have some of this data, or some of these values. The adjacent is not given, so it's lowercase b, and the hypotenuse is 16. So this is another example where the unknown is at the top, but you will encounter some where the unknown is at the bottom, and don't forget to refer back to the example that we did in order to flip. So in order to solve for b here, there's a division by 16 that is in the way, so we're going to multiply by 16, cross those out, and we've got 1b, or just b, equals cosine of 37 times 16. So we'll write or type that in. Don't forget to use the cosine button. Cosine of 37, close the bracket, times 16 is equal to 12.7. However, there's a 7 right after the other 7, which means that it's 12.8. Approximately 12.8. So I'm just going to put a little therefore sentence here. Therefore, b is equal to approximately 12.8, and this time it's in meters. So I wrote down for the supply to give you questions C, D, and E, and F to complete during this class. Give it a try. Compare your answers to people around you to make sure you're doing it properly. And there's another worksheet to practice finding sides as well. So you've got tons of practice today. And if you have any questions, we'll go over it when I get back.